Today marks 35 years since the largest accidental explosion in Nevada's history.
2 people were killed. Nearly 400 people were hurt at that plant in Henderson that was producing a chemical used in rocket fuel. Fox 5's Alexis Fernandez has the story on a worker who remembers that day so vividly.
Well, Jacqueline and John, Andy Garcia is among countless people who were going about their day on May 4th, 1988, when all of a sudden their worlds were changed. When Andy Garcia looks back at old newspaper articles about the PEPCON disaster, he has one feeling.
The fact that I was a lucky man and some weren't lucky. Praise the Lord that you weren't there.
Garcia was driving a catering truck that day 35 years ago.
It was about a mile and a half, maybe 2 at the most. And I was headed there to serve him, but thank goodness I didn't make it.
That's when he noticed something was wrong.
I seen the fire and pulled over. And then after that fire, there come the big explosion. There was 2 from what I understand. I seen the fire, I didn't hear nothing, but when the second one, you knew it came. And
the accidental explosion at Pacific Engineering and Production Corporation of Nevada was the most powerful civilian explosion in the country. 2 people were killed and nearly 400 were injured. The resulting shockwave blew out glass within a 3-mile radius, and many homes were damaged.
I just heard it, and holy cow. Turned that truck on Lake Mead, made a U-turn, went back to Boulder Highway. All signals were out. So it was every man for himself getting through that intersection, and there was a lot of paranoia, a lot of scared drivers.
The plant produced a chemical used in rocket fuel.
That was the year of the space shuttle, so that was pretty vital to the program and stuff.
Investigators believe the explosion started from a welder's torch. Garcia says he went back the next day and the smoke was still simmering. A disaster, he says, will always be on his mind. An estimated 4,500 tons of stuff were at the facility, causing nearly $200 million in damages. PEPCON eventually settled a $125 million lawsuit in 1992 for the damages and to victims and their families.